Picher, Oklahoma was once the most productive lead and zinc mining town in American history. Today it is a federal Superfund site with 0 residents, and it is slowly being dismantled piece by piece. But unlike every other abandoned town in America, Picher is not simply being left to rot. The toxic rock that poisoned it is now being used to pave highways across the Midwest. And the people doing the work are the same people the mining companies displaced a century ago. This is not a ghost town story. This is an environmental justice story. The Tri-State Mining District sits at the corner of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. In the early 1900s, this stretch of land produced more lead and zinc than anywhere else on Earth. Picher was the heart of it. At its peak in the 1920s, the town had a population of 14,000 people. The ore pulled from beneath its streets supplied approximately 75% of the bullets and metal used by Allied forces in World War I and World War II. The Picher Guerrillas, the town's high school football team, played in a stadium built on top of ground that was being hollowed out beneath them. Nobody asked what would happen when the mines ran dry. The answer came slowly, then all at once. The mining technique used throughout the district was called room and pillar mining, a method that removes ore in a grid pattern, leaving pillars of rock to support the ground above. When those pillars weaken, the surface collapses without warning. By the 1970s, sinkholes were opening under Picher streets, under front lawns, under homes. The ground itself had become unpredictable. Residents stopped letting children play in certain yards, but the sinkholes were not the worst of it. The mining operations at the Tar Creek Superfund Site left behind an estimated 30 million tons of mine tailings, locally known as chat piles. These are mountains of crushed rock and mineral waste, some rising over 200 feet, spread across the landscape like gray dunes. Chat is composed of silica, lead, cadmium, and zinc. It also blows. For decades, chat dust drifted across Picher, settling on playgrounds, gardens, and rooftops. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. Did you ever hear about Picher growing up? Did you know this town existed before today? Let us know in the comments below. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps us understand which stories are still being told and which ones have been quietly forgotten. The EPA began investigating the area in the early 1980s. What they found was staggering. Tar Creek itself had turned bright orange from acid mine drainage, a chemical reaction that leaches iron and sulfur compounds from abandoned tunnels directly into the waterway. Underground streams connected to the old mines were contaminating local water supplies. CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, classified Tar Creek as a priority Superfund site in 1983. But the blood tests are what ended Picher. Studies conducted through the 1990s and the 2000s found that 43% of children in the area had blood lead levels high enough to cause permanent cognitive delays. Lead poisoning at these concentrations affects brain development, behavior, and learning. An entire generation of children in Picher and the neighboring towns of Treese, Kansas, and Cardin, Oklahoma, had been quietly harmed. A federal relocation program was established, but by the time it reached most families, the damage had already been done. In May 2008, an EF4 tornado tore through what remained of Picher, destroying dozens of structures and killing 6 people. The federal buyout accelerated. Most remaining residents accepted the offer. The last resident, a pharmacist named Gary Linderman, who locals called the last man standing, died in 2015. After that, there was no one left. Urban explorers began arriving almost immediately after the buyout. They filmed the empty streets, the collapsed rooftops, the rusting water tower still bearing the Picher Guerrillas logo. They called it a dead town. They were wrong. Today, Picher is a massive, active construction zone. Heavy equipment moves across the landscape, shifting millions of tons of toxic chat. The people driving that equipment are the exact same people who were displaced from this land a century ago, the Quapaw Nation. The land beneath Picher was always Quapaw territory. The federal government designated it as reservation land in 1833, then effectively stripped tribal authority when lead was discovered in the 1890s. Mining companies moved in, and the Quapaw were given royalties. Many became incredibly wealthy during the boom. But in a dark twist, the government then deemed many tribal members incompetent to manage their own money. Corrupt officials were appointed as guardians, effectively draining their wealth while their land was being hollowed out. The Quapaw lost both the land and the profits from it. What happened next is without precedent in American environmental history. In 2013, the Quapaw Nation petitioned the EPA to take control of a 40-acre section of the Superfund Site, known as the Catholic 40, and to conduct the environmental remediation themselves. The EPA approved the petition. The Quapaw mobilized their own environmental department, hired tribal members, and began moving chat. Chat sales, the legal mechanism for selling processed mine waste to road contractors, became the financial engine of the whole operation. They proved within 2 years that the site could be cleaned faster and more effectively under tribal management than it had been under federal oversight. The EPA expanded their authority across the broader Tar Creek Superfund remediation zone. To date, the Quapaw have moved over 7 million tons of toxic chat from the landscape. That material is not being dumped. It is washed to remove the toxic dust, then encapsulated in hot asphalt to pave roads across Oklahoma and the surrounding states. The rock that poisoned Picher's children is now underneath the highways that connect the region. Along Tar Creek itself, Quapaw environmental scientists are restoring wetlands and reseeding tallgrass prairie. The orange water is slowly clearing. Wildlife is returning to land that has been dead for decades. Picher, Oklahoma is still a ghost town. But beneath the surface, something is being rebuilt. Not by the government that allowed the poisoning, not by the companies that caused it, by the people who were there first. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more abandonment documentaries from across America.